Hitler was a and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really cool.
Now, we got to talk about Nick Fuentes, the alt-right, far-right extremist, there's really no other word for him, who just did an extensive 2+ hour interview with Tucker Carlson. And I watched the whole thing. It took a long time. There were so many paid sponsorship breaks that kept popping up. But I did sit through the whole thing, and I have some very strong thoughts about it that I want to talk to you about and highlight a couple moments from it. But more importantly, like what was not mentioned in this interview, which is what I find really diabolical on Tucker's part. But first, you guys need to know who Nick Fuentes is. I know these words are thrown around a lot. I know they're overused and people have watered them down, but he genuinely is extremely racist, extremely sexist, hates women, hates gay people, just extremely anti-Semitic, the most openly anti-Semitic person I've ever seen. And it's not just jokes. Okay. I'm okay with edgy, funny jokes. It is not a joke to him. He admires Hitler. That's not a misquote. In fact, when I was putting together the compilation I'm about to show you, I had like 3 different clips of him talking about how much he likes Hitler that I could have chosen, and I had to pick one. That's who we're dealing with here. Listen to this compilation I made so you get a sense of who this is and just how extreme and hateful his views are.
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really cool. So, time to grow up. We're not children anymore, am I right? It's like, this guy's awesome. This guy's cool. We have got to talk about the fundamentals of our worldview. It looks like a society where women don't have the right to vote. And it looks like a society where boys and girls get married as teenagers and start having kids. And they don't use birth control and they don't use contraceptives. And they have big families and a high birth rate. And it looks like women wearing veils at church. And it looks like women not being in the workforce. And it looks like mothers raising their kids. And it looks like pornography being banned. And homosexuality and transsexuality, as well as heterosexual sodomy, as well as fornication and adultery being shamed by the society, and maybe in some places, in some jurisdictions, regulated by the law. It's not enough to say we're against. You got to be against women's rights too. It's not enough to be against blue-haired feminism. You got to be against women getting educated. Okay? Or else, what are we really trying to achieve here? 1999? 1999 sucked too. We want to go back to 1099. We want to go back to the Middle Ages. So we're burning your gay pride flag. We're burning your gay pride float. And then we're going to drag your bitch wife out of her house, kicking and screaming. And then we're going to burn her at the stake too for being a witch.
What I need you to understand about this more than 2-hour interview with Tucker is that really not a single one of Nick Fuentes's dozens and dozens and dozens of extremist positions and comments and quotes was brought up by Tucker or presented to him in any sort of challenging way, which Tucker does know how to do. He knows how to do an adversarial, tough interview. Just watch the interview he did with Senator Ted Cruz a few months back, which I defended him for doing, but he really grilled Ted Cruz and pressed him on a number of issues. But that is decidedly not what he decided to do in this Nick Fuentes interview. He did a 2-hour tongue bath, a 2-hour softball, where he just guffawed and nodded along at everything Nick said, no matter, even if it directly contradicts what Tucker has always said he believes in. He just let it slide. And then he did not press or challenge Nick on any, really, with maybe one exception that I'll talk about, of his extremist positions and views. And then also, Tucker is somebody who talks a lot about how important loyalty is to him. He didn't call out any of the terrible, horrible things Nick Fuentes has said about his good friend, J.D. Vance, for example, the vice president. Nick Fuentes has attacked him for having a brown family and said that he prefers Gavin Newsom for having a white family and a pretty white wife. You didn't want to bring that up? Look at this. Look at Charlie Kirk, who Tucker was a dear friend of, spoke at his memorial service. Well, not only does Nick Fuentes attack Erica Kirk, said that she's fake and looks like she's happy that her husband is dead, he also constantly insulted and attacked Charlie while he was alive. Listen to this.
Charlie Kirk, in the grand scheme of things, is just some retarded idiot. The dog is terrified. I had to go upstairs and reassure him because I'm screaming at my screen, calling Charlie Kirk a bitch and everything. The contrast could not be more clear. Charlie Kirk is a totally unexceptional human being. A moral struggle that's happening on the higher dimension, right? Which is Christ versus the devil. Who does Charlie Kirk serve? Is he really a Christian? Is he really Christ-like when he supports foreign wars and Israel and all this? Look at the people he's taking money from. So the guy's a fake Christian. The guy's not a patriot. He hates our country. He's un-American. Charlie Kirk is a retard and a coward. So we've got him checked.
None of this, not a single piece of it, was brought up by Tucker Carlson in this interview. Seriously. None of the extremist quotes, none of the attacks on his dear friends. Instead, they essentially had about a 2-hour-long conversation walking through Nick Fuentes' biography. A lot of the questions Tucker asked were things you could Google, which is always a rule of thumb in interviews. You're wasting people's time if you're asking them these things. Now, I should be fair that some aspects of Nick Fuentes' story are important and I do think are really terrible. For example, he was placed on the no-fly list because of his political views and banned from flying. I think that's terrible. I would never support that. I believe I called it out at the time. He also faced an attempt on his life. Some crazy person tried to kill Nick. I condemn that totally. I think that's terrible. I think those are perfectly legitimate things to talk about and discuss. But the net effect of Tucker just calmly massaging Nick through a 2-hour conversation about his backstory and his life, including very factually disputed elements of his story as it concerns the Daily Wire and the people he's beefed with no pushback or really tough questioning, is to present him as this misunderstood figure, this reasonable guy who people just don't get, rather than the actual hateful extremist that he is. Tucker essentially sane-washed one of the most uniquely noxious people in American politics, all while enriching himself vastly off of it. I mean, he got millions and millions of views, obsessive amount of paid sponsorships inserted into this video. The amount of money he will have made from this is extraordinary, I can tell you. Tucker really did no sense of journalistic duty at all in this interview, even when Nick said things that so directly contradict Tucker's beliefs. For example, Tucker has always said that he thinks the late Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin is one of the most evil people in human history. But Nick briefly mentioned that he's actually a fan. He's an admirer of Joseph Stalin, even though he killed millions of people and actually uniquely persecuted Catholics. But Tucker just kind of laughed and nodded along when Nick said this absolutely deranged thing. Listen to this.
So it was like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was an admirer. But we don't need to go into that. I guess.
Well, that's... okay, let's get back to it. We'll circle back to that.
We'll circle back. Well, he never did. He never did in the interview circle back to that absolutely deranged statement that you admire a mass murderer and authoritarian that Tucker has inveigled against throughout his entire career. If that little clip doesn't sum up the obsequiousness of this interview, I don't know what will. The only part where Tucker really attempted to push back on Nick at all was when they were talking about like the issue they have with Israel or with Christian Zionism, which Tucker talked about how much he hates. Tucker repeatedly tried to get Nick to agree with him that the issue is not all Jewish people. It is specifically like hardcore Zionist types. It's not all Jewish people. And Tucker talked about how he knows many anti-Israel Jewish Orthodox people and the like. And Nick was like, no. I mean, I have a couple quotes here. Nick insisted that, quote, organized Jewry in America is the problem and that, quote, Jewishness is the common denominator. And Tucker, after he tried to get Nick to agree it's not all Jewish people, blah, 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 kind of basic decency of separating criticism of Israel or disagreeing with Zionism from anti-Semitism. And Nick was like, no, not really. I mean, yeah, maybe some Jewish people don't think that way, but it's a Jewish thing. Yeah, he just doubled down on that. And honestly, and then Tucker just nodded along and kept it moving. Didn't call that out for the anti-Semitic trash that it is. Across like the more than 2 hours with all these sponsorship breaks, he really was nothing more than a flannel-colored doormat during this conversation. It's just a disgraceful performance as a journalist. And here's the difference between me and some Tucker critics. I do not think the problem is that he interviewed Nick Fuentes, that he platformed Nick Fuentes. I don't think that's the problem. I haven't and I never will subscribe to this no platform bigots or anything idea or approach in journalism, because whether we like it or not, honestly, the effort to gatekeep Nick Fuentes and his kind of brand of alt-right radicalism, to gatekeep them out of the mainstream Republican Party, mainstream conservative media, it's failed. He is relevant. He is mainstream now. And so I think it is absolutely not only okay or defensible, but imperative that serious journalists should interview him and interrogate his ideas and hold him to account for the things he has said and done. But that is not what Tucker just did. No, this guy who has a decades-long career in cable news and certainly knows how to conduct a serious interview instead decided to do a softball PR fest to sane wash and promote one of the most extreme and noxious figures in American politics today. I don't know, man. I hope the attention, hope the ad revenue, which I'm sure is going to be astonishing. Hope it's worth it. Hope it's worth whatever last shred of credibility and journalistic integrity Tucker had. That's my take on it all. I'm always open to hearing different opinions. You guys let me know in the comments what you think. Do make sure you're subscribed. If you aren't yet, hit the like button. And that'll be it for today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Do send in your voicemails for our Voicemail Friday episodes. Rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And with that, guys, we'll talk again real soon.